good evening to everyone that I haven't had an opportunity to meet and shake hands. I think I got through most of everyone except for people who may have came a little bit late. Thank you, Captain, for the invite. So this will be my first community meeting of my career here.
Setting the standard high.
You'll always have that to share. Right? So what I wanted to do was just give you a little background into who I am, who Shon Barnes is, tell you a little bit about the priorities that we established for the police department, and then a little bit about how I think we're going to get there, and then finally some Q&A. It should be a lot of Q&A because Captain Bear told me that she had all crime stomped out by last Thursday. That's what I asked the folks to do. So who am I? So if you think about a time in your life where you pivoted, where something happened that kind of changed the direction of where you're going, that's kind of how it happened. For the first 4 years of my quasi-adult life, if you will, I was a public school teacher. I went to school and got a degree in history pre-law, and then went to another college and started taking courses on how to be a teacher, and that became my passion. I taught history, U.S. history, to 10th graders. I taught world civilization to 9th graders, trying to get them to pay attention to me. And that was my life, and I truly enjoyed it. I really felt like that was my calling. I had a very talented student, I won't call his name, but he didn't show up to school one day, and it was like kind of unusual because he always came. He was very, very bright, extremely intelligent. In fact, I tried to pride myself on being a tough teacher, and I couldn't trip him up. He made great grades and always did everything. And it turns out I lost him to gun violence. He wasn't killed, he actually killed someone else in what's called a home invasion robbery, where he didn't know the homeowner was there. I don't know what happened, but the student was like, "You didn't hear what happened?" I was like, "No, of course I did." And they told me about that. It bothered me so much that I sat down and had a conversation with our school resource officer at the time, and I really do support that program when it's done well. Right? If it's not done well, I don't support it. But if it's done well and the officers are there as a resource, as a mentor, as someone the kids can talk to, as someone that they can trust, establish relationships, they're not there for discipline. Like this school resource officer, I felt I could go to him and talk. And I went to him and we had a long conversation. At the end of the conversation, he goes, "You should be a police officer." It's like, I really like the way you think. We need more people who think the way you do. You really want to save people and not discard people. That's what we need in policing. And so I thought about it and kind of looked at who I was. And I said, I think I qualify. I've never been caught for anything, so I was good on that side. And so I started researching agencies that I wanted to work with. And I found an agency 4 hours from me called the Greensboro Police Department in North Carolina. And they were in this book that I was reading on community policing. And so they clearly defined what it was, what it meant, and then they used Greensboro as an example of how every officer is a community policing officer. It was a department where we didn't have just certain groups. Yes, there were some groups that were coordinating it, but everyone was asked to do this kind of work. And I was like, I think that's where I want to do. So I applied, got the job, and moved 4 hours from the beach, by the way. I was on the coast, inland, to work in Greensboro. I had an amazing career there. I met some really, really nice people. I feel fortunate that I've always had leaders who really police the right way, who really want to be mentors and guide people. And so I try to do that in my leadership style. You will see that I bring people with me to things. Even as a chief of I brought some people with me to the State of the City address that the mayor did. I've just been doing that my entire career, right? Because that's the goal of leadership, right? You have to mentor, and the question is, who's better because you came, right? To me, that's the leadership question. And so you can never answer that if you're not engaged and involved with people. So I went there, kind of rose through the ranks. Initially didn't want to get promoted. I was fine with being a night shift sergeant because it's cool. Because it gets hot during the day. You see no commanders, sorry, Captain, at all. I mean, at all. You know they exist, you just never see them. And so I enjoyed that, and then you get to go out and play, right? You know, there's a lot to do, and you can get where you need to go. And then I was asked to promote, and I took it seriously because there was a time, certainly in the South, where people who looked like me did not get an opportunity to be a leader, specifically in police departments. And when that was imparted to me by my lieutenant, Mike Brody at the time, I said, okay, I want to take this seriously. And so began to kind of learn a little bit about who I am. Went to school, got a little bit of schooling, if you will, because I wanted to be a better leader. Worked in North Carolina for about 20 years, briefly moved to Chicago, got a job working in civilian oversight. So I went from being a police officer to working in civilian oversight. So recognized as like being the only chief to do both. But I was a trainer, and so I thought that civilian oversight was something that was kind of new. It's not actually new. Actually, civilian oversight goes all the way back to the Wickersham Commission and President Hoover, to be honest with you, who was Wickersham's Attorney General. So during the Great Depression, they were trying to figure out how to make things better between police and communities all the way back then. So it's not new. But I felt that it couldn't work well if the investigators or the lawyers didn't understand policing. So I took a job as Director of Training and Professional Development. So my job was to teach lawyers who did the investigating how to understand police, how to understand police tactics, how to understand policy and procedure so that you can evaluate people fairly. And I really enjoyed that. But deep down in my heart, I knew that I was not done with police, despite what I told my family, despite what I told myself. And so I got a call from a police executive research forum person, you may have heard of them, asking me if I would be interested in going to Madison, Wisconsin. I knew a little bit about Madison, believe it or not, I have an uncle who lives there, still does, and I said, okay, let's look into it. So I looked into the agency, and everything has to be a good fit. And it was an agency that I think is a very good agency, very progressive. They were leading the nation in women. When I got there were 28% women, and they still are today. And that happened long before I got there. I cannot take any credit for that. That's a culture that they value in Madison. I said, okay, I like this. So I put it in, went through the thing, and I've been there for 4 years. And then a good friend of mine by the name of Kathy O'Toole called me and said, hey, did you know that Seattle was looking for a chief? Of course I did, but I was like, no, not really. She said, listen, you should look into it. They're a great agency, and I knew that. I know plenty of people who are police officers here or were here, leaders, things of that nature, just through being out and about. And I started looking into it, and I asked myself some questions. Number one, do they believe in the community? The answer was yes. Number two, are they resilient? The answer was yes. And then number three, what kind of support would I get from the mayor and city council? In all honesty and all fairness. And so when I got an answer of yes, listening to people and talking to people, to me, I said this could work. And so I submitted my information, went through the process, and it was a process where, for me, I just talked about who I am as a human being, who my parents raised, who my grandparents raised, who I am. I'm just a hard-working person that loves people and believes in doing the right thing. 1 year from retiring, so I did not get a retirement in Madison. So I'm here. We go together now. I'm not going anywhere because this is where I want to end my career. And as I go through the different precincts and as I talk to people, I really see a passion for community and a passion for people. And that's one of the things that I think gets me up every day and kind of drives me to work, if you will. So let's talk about priorities. So I have some priorities that we have established, but I want to be clear, they're not the chief's priorities, they are the department's priorities. One person, no matter whatever their claim to fame may be, does not drive an organization. Organizations are driven by the people who have to do the work, all agreeing that this work is meaningful and it's the work that's going to keep everyone safe. Clear on that. So these are the priorities that we set. Number one is crime prevention. That is the job. It's not simply responding to crime. It's not getting there quickly. It's not doing reports. All of that is part of it. But our job is the prevention of crime, and I'll talk a little bit about that a little later on. Number two is community engagement, what we're doing right now. This is the standard, right? And so when I was a teacher, I always gave homework. So I'm going to give you guys some homework. The next meeting, everyone has to bring one other person with you. Got it?
One person.
One person. Bring one person with you. That's your homework. But that's how we build community. When I say community engagement, I'm talking about residential community. I'm talking about the business community, which I have a really big heart for. My father was a small business owner, not anything like Amazon or Starbucks, but he owned a tow truck company. And we did what we call record by rotations, what we call in police work. So I've been around cops my entire life, to be honest with you. My dad getting up in the middle of the night to pull someone out of the ditch. I may have had one too many. I've seen that my entire life. But, you know, not wealthy or rich, but just a small business person. And so I do have a big heart for the small business community. And so community engagement is our second priority. Our third priority is the retention and recruitment of a qualified workforce. And when I say retention and recruitment, I mean in that order. We invest a lot in our people emotionally, right? Financially, physically. We want to make sure that we keep them. How do you keep people? People want to feel valued. They want to know that the work they do in policing is safe and that it's meaningful.
Yes.
And to my officers in the room that wear the same badge that I wear, I can't guarantee that the job is going to be easy every single day. But what I can do is guarantee that every day you go home the same way you came, because you're safe, and that you feel good about the work that you did. That's my guarantee to you. And so that's how we're going to keep people. We're going to let them know that they are valued, and we're going to listen to them, and we're going to definitely include them as our partners and show value. And then recruitment. Recruitment happens all the time. There's nowhere I go where I don't try to recruit someone. Is that true?
It's true.
I don't care who you are, you're going to get the pitch from me, right? Any building, anyone. You ready? We're going to do that because I think that people know about us. There are people, in my building that's applied to be a Seattle police officer. I have friends in Atlanta whose their kids are applying here. And I just got to share this story. So I get here, one of the things that I get to do is I get to swear in new officers. The first person I swore in was a Madison police officer. His name is Trey. He and his wife came here to visit, fell in love with the city, and he applied. So the same week that it was announced that I was the new chief, he was telling me that he was leaving. I saw his resignation, and he was going to come to Seattle. He's already here. And because I had to go to the academy for the last 2 weeks. Yeah, it's not class bad. Do not want to do that ever again. He was in the academy with me. Right? So he's now fully sworn, he's ready to go, and I think he's going to do an amazing job. So it just tells you something about what an amazing city that we have. And so after retention and recruitment is something that I'm very near and dear to my heart, and that's officer safety and wellness, also called officer and employee safety and wellness. You may have heard of President Obama's 21st Century Task Force on Policing after Mike Brown. That task force had 6 pillars. Pillar 6 was officer safety and wellness. And years ago, I was asked to sit on that pillar. And so that's not the one I wanted. I wanted crime prevention because I love talking about crime. And so when I got the call from Nancy Levine, who is the director of the National Institute of Justice, she asked if I would sit on pillar 6. I'm like, yeah, sure, of course. Never got to meet President Obama. But I was the one doing all the work. But nevertheless, I learned so much from an experience that I kind of didn't want. But I learned about officer wellness and what that actually means and how important it is to take care of ourselves. Because I will tell you, in my day, it was you see things, you go through things, and you just go to work and you come back again. And we now know that trauma is real, and we also know that if it's not treated well, it manifests itself in other ways. And so we're learning more about that. I'm learning every day. And so I want to make sure that the officers and the employees too, because our non-commissioned, our professional staff are very important. If they all got up and left tomorrow, we'd be in trouble. And sometimes they have to read reports and see things, process things, and we deserve to give them the same amount of care and services we do everyone else. It's very important. And so that will be our next pillar. So our last pillar is continuous improvement. We have to continue to make sure that every single day we do something to get better and better and better. That's one of the things that really drew me here, because I see that the department wants to do that. They want to get better, they want direction, they want leadership, they want to keep moving. And so I'm very, very happy with that. So those are our departmental priorities. We're going to be working towards them, beginning with with all of them, but with crime prevention. And so we're going to be putting together a crime prevention model. Right now I'm calling it Seattle-centric, but it is based on, loosely based on stratified policing, which is a combination of just understanding how crime operates, understanding community engagement, crime prevention. The captain talked about those I would say those significant incidents that we talked about. We're going to understand those a little bit better. We're going to set thresholds for those, and something will happen differently. And so when I first, as an example, when I first came to Madison, we had an issue with people stealing Kia and Hyundais. Probably never heard about this. So that started in Milwaukee, by the way. With some young kids figuring out how to defeat the device. And so we set up a structure called a crime pattern tracker. And doing so, we looked at 4 cars stolen within a half-a-mile radius within 10 days triggers something different, a different type, a different level of response. And so what was happening is the captains would come in every day and they would get data sheets about what was going on, and based on how close they were to those thresholds, they could move resources or ask for resources in order so that 2 doesn't become 4, and 4 doesn't become 6. That's how you reduce crime. It has to be done systematically, and we're going to do that over a variety of categories, and we'll talk about that a little bit later as we introduce the model to the precinct. The precinct captains will be very, very important in Seattle-centric policing. They're going to run the show. They'll have access to the resources that they need. They'll have access to the analytic data that they need. They'll have access to me. They'll have access to our crime prevention officers, and we're going to make sure that we understand what's important in Southwest. And all the precincts are going to do this. We're not going to come in and say, this is what's important, this is what we see. No, we're going to do that together. And we'll have this plan and we'll roll out, we'll know what's important. So when we have our next meeting, you'll know what's significant and how we measure that. It's different from each precinct. Some precincts have different problems. So we want to make sure that we uplift our precinct captains and we give them a review. But I am incredibly honored and pleased to be here. I love community, I love talking about crime, and I'm going to be quiet for a minute, take a sip of water, take a deep breath, and then some Q&A.